LeBron era isn't over yet. How does he compare Michael Jordan?
Michael is the greatest player ever. If Michael played in this era, he'll average 50.
Close enough between Michael and anyone else to really have the conversation. Let's be honest about it.
But it's just not all about rings. You look at LeBron, a 13-time first-team All-NBA player, a 17-time All-NBA player, about to be a 20-time All-Star game starts. All of it in its totality. That's why I have LeBron. It's a two-man race for me. It's Jordan and LeBron, and I'm in Team LeBron.
To rank these legendary basketball players from best to worst. LeBron James, Michael Jordan, and Kobe Bryant.
I'm the best, Michael second best, LeBron.
You can only choose one. LeBron, Mike, Kobe.
I took Jordan.
You took Jordan?
I'm never going against Jordan.
Greatest of all time, Jalen?
Airness.
Greatest of all time?
Unanimous.
Okay, thank you very much.
Still has a way to go clearly to pass. Michael Jordan, Bill Russell, 11 championships, 13 years, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar,
The captain.
and my heart just won't let him pass Magic just yet.
Does LeBron have to do something, or can he do something where you would go, now I would look at him as the best player?
No, I think for me it's MJ all day long.
17 seconds from Game 7 or from championship number 6. Jordan. Open. Chicago with the lead.
Misses. Rebound taken by Iguodala. Iguodala to Curry. Back to Iguodala. Up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. LeBron James with the rejection.
That one right there made me the greatest player of all time. That's what I felt.
Michael Jordan versus LeBron James. LeBron versus Mike. A question that you just can't escape if you follow sports, no matter how hard you try. A question that's broken many friendships apart. Do you ever just see some lousy GOAT debate on something like ESPN and just wonder, I wish someone could actually make a solid GOAT debate video? Well, my goal with this video is to provide you with one of, if not the best GOAT debate video you'll ever watch on the internet. From going over the basics to diving deep into some of the most finite and minuscule details of the discussion, sit back and relax. Right now, we're in one of the most special times in the GOAT debate's history. Never in NBA history has the race for the title of the greatest NBA player ever been so close between two legends. The very first GOAT of the NBA was George Mikan on the Minneapolis Lakers, who won 5 championships with the Lakers in the late 40s and early 50s, but his reign as the GOAT quickly ended as the likes of Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain quickly shifted the narrative. After the 60s, it was either Bill Russell's 11 rings or Wilt Chamberlain's unbreakable stats and records. However, most people sided with Bill. Some people even threw Oscar Robertson into the GOAT debate when ring culture and accolades weren't as prevalent in the debate. After the 70s, many people today would just assume Kareem would be the next man in line. But you have to remember, at the time, rings and awards weren't as prevalent in the GOAT debate. People valued entertainment and the eye test a lot more. Kareem really didn't get a say in the conversation until after his playing days were over. After the stars of the 60s, the next two men to take the spotlight of the GOAT debate were Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, who held it for the majority of the 80s. But that shifted very quick as Michael Jordan quickly swooped in and completely mesmerized our brains. After Jordan won his first three-peat, he was pretty much anointed as the GOAT, despite players like Kareem, Russell, and even Wilt Chamberlain having better basketball resumes at the time. The excitement of MJ took over people's minds. And with MJ's second three-peat, there was no doubt in people's minds. MJ stood as the uncontested greatest player of all time for a pretty long while. Many players tried to overthrow Air Jordan, but they just couldn't do it. Well, except one player. LeBron James in 2016 created a permanent dent in the GOAT debate. Prior to this year, we had never seen a player beat a dynasty, the greatest team of all time in the NBA Finals. With LeBron coming back 3-1 against the Warriors in 2016, this captured the hearts of many younger fans. After that, LeBron won yet another championship and had sustained longevity that we simply thought was impossible. Never in the history of the NBA has the GOAT debate between the persistent consistent and undeniable longevity of LeBron versus the flair and pure dominance that MJ had in a shorter stint. Last year, in April of 2024, The Atlantic put out a poll for NBA players to answer their opinions on the GOAT debate, and the results were shocking. For the first time in what seems like forever, Michael Jordan was not the majority pick in the GOAT debate anymore. In 2024, 49% of people picked Michael Jordan, 37% of players picked LeBron, 9% of players picked Kobe, and the remaining 5% of players picked someone else. Now, these results don't seem that close until you look at the results of the exact same poll taken just 6 years ago in 2019, where Michael Jordan, instead of just having 49% of the votes, had 73% of votes. LeBron in 2019 was closer to Kobe in the GOAT debate than Jordan. The pedestal that fans held Michael Jordan on for decades seems like it shattered. So what happened in this 5-year gap? Was it LeBron's 4th ring, breaking Kareem's all-time scoring record, the unprecedented longevity, or maybe all of the above? What's the reality of the GOAT debate in 2025 and beyond? To get things started here, let's get the basic stats out of the way. When taking a look at the 5 main stats, at first glance you might think LeBron James is the obvious pick for this category. He leads Michael Jordan in 4 of the 5 main stats, that being points, rebounds, assists, and blocks. LeBron has about 8,000 more points than Jordan, 4,000 more rebounds, 5,000 more assists, and about 200 more blocks. But I think the totals categories are a bit deceiving. By this logic, would you consider Moses Malone a better scorer than James Harden? Would you consider Tim Duncan better at getting buckets than Allen Iverson or Steph Curry? Would you consider Buck Williams a better rebounder than Dennis Rodman? Would you consider Andre Miller a better passer than Rajon Rondo? There are 38 players ahead of Larry Bird in the all-time scoring list. You can't sit here and tell me with a straight face that 38 basketball players in NBA history could score the ball better than Larry Bird. I think the stat totals are a decent way of looking at who's better but it requires some context around it. The issue with purely looking at totals of stats is that it more shows who was able to maintain a high level of production throughout their career, not who was actually better at the skill. Of course, the longevity is an achievement on its own. Taking a look at career averages, Michael Jordan wins in scoring, steals, and blocks, while LeBron wins in rebounds and assists. When adding efficiency, LeBron takes the slight edge in field goal percentage and three-point percentage, while Jordan takes a pretty sizable gap in free throw percentage. But here's the kicker. Both players can pretty much do everything on the floor. Neither of them really had any weaknesses, at least on offense. During the end of the 1988 and 89 season, the Bulls point guard Sam Vincent was noticeably struggling to facilitate the Bulls offense. So what did the Bulls coach do? They put Michael Jordan at point guard for the remaining 28 games of the season, and he went on to average 30.4 points, 9.2 rebounds, and 10.7 assists. Michael Jordan also averaged 8.5 assists per game in his very first career playoff series against the Bucks, while still maintaining 29 points and 6 rebounds. He also averaged 31, 6, and 11 in the NBA Finals in 1991. On top of that, he's also had 3 playoff series where he's averaged more than 9 boards a game. So to say that Jordan was only a scorer on offense and contributed nothing else is borderline insane. But I would argue that LeBron James is the more versatile player on offense. LeBron has proven that he can be the best passer in the league if he wants to, leading the league in scoring in 2020. He also averaged north of 9 assists per game in 2018 and in the current 2024-2025 season. And let's not even get into playoff numbers. The King has 5 playoff series where he's averaged double-digit assist numbers and 17 series where he's averaged more than 10 boards. To conclude here, I would give the categories of rebounding, assists, and blocks to LeBron, while giving the categories of scoring and steals to Jordan. For any of you guys who are wondering why I gave the scoring to Jordan instead of LeBron, Michael Jordan had the highest regular season and playoff scoring averages, while maintaining very good shooting splits, especially coming from a 200-pound guard and a player that shot further away from the basket on average than LeBron. Jordan also played in a very physical era in the 80s that had next to no spacing and was still able to put up scoring numbers that only Wilt was able to overcome. He also dominated scoring during his second three-peat, which marks the beginning of the dead ball era, aka there was less possessions to score. Jordan also has the highest per 100 possessions scoring average, which is about 4 more points than LeBron's. Michael Jordan also didn't have the green light to jack up the amount of threes LeBron can, especially with the Lakers, which which deflates Jordan's scoring averages compared to modern day players. While LeBron got a taste of the dead ball era and a lack of hand checking early in his career with the Cavs, how Jordan had it, throughout most of LeBron's career, he's been lucky enough to play in the highest scoring era outside of the early 60s. He played in an era where it's never been easier to get to the rim and score, with spacing like none other, and officiating geared towards favoring offense. If you give Jordan the spacing of today with several elite three-point shooters around him, a lack of physicality, and the green light to take 6 to 10 three-pointers a game, and the ability to just foul bait until the ref's whistle stops working, I'm not joking here to where I think we could see Jordan's scoring numbers look a lot like Wilt's. If you guys are more interested in this greatest scorers debate, I'll have my video about it linked right here where I break it down a lot more. But this video is long enough, let's move on. Next, let's take a look at advanced stats, which I believe paint the picture of overall production better. For those of you who aren't familiar with these stats, advanced stats are different from your traditional points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks, because advanced stats attempt to show you overall on-court production effectiveness rather than narrowing it down to a singular area how normal stats do. When looking at some of the main advanced stats that Basketball Reference uses, like PER, which shows a per minute rating of a player's overall on-court contribution, true shooting percentage, which is like field goal percentage, but it factors in threes, twos, and free throws. Win shares per 48, which is an estimate of the number of wins contributed by a player if they hypothetically played the whole game. Box plus minus, which gives us a number for overall impact on the floor. And value over replacement, which, like the name suggests, shows how much better a player is compared to the average NBA player. When looking at LeBron and MJ in these categories, MJ beats out James in PER, win shares per 48, box plus minus, and value over replacement. The King only takes true shooting percentage, but similar to the counting stats, these metrics are going to favor Jordan because they're averages, not accumulation stats. When we take a look at the advanced stats that are totals, not averages, LeBron takes overall win shares, offense and defensive win shares, and total value over replacement points. As you guys have noticed, a very common theme amongst the Jordan versus LeBron debate is the clash between longevity and peak performance. If MJ chose to play longer and sacrifice his legacy, would he still put up the same type of point, rebound, and assist totals that LeBron has? If LeBron chose to retire early, say after his 2020 ring or even after his 2016 ring, would this hide his declining years with the Lakers and make his peaks look that much more higher? We're still far from being done with this discussion. One of the central topics of discussion of this debate is the argument of peak performance versus the sustainability of great performance. The harsh truth about the GOAT debate is that there's really no objective answer. It really comes down to what you value more in a basketball player. The unmatched flame that burns harder than any other flame has, or the flame that just won't quit burning. I'm just here to shine light on the objective truth that we can judge these players off of. But was prime MJ actually better than prime LeBron though? When taking a look at the combined points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks of Jordan and LeBron over their whole careers, it looks like this. According to this formula, LeBron James' best season was his final year in Cleveland before signing with the Heat in 2010, where he had a combined stat score of 48.2. Michael Jordan has 5 individual seasons that are better than this, that being 1987, 88, 89, 1990, and 1993. But like any metric, there's flaws to it. In LeBron's best season of 2010, the league was averaging exactly 100 points with 92.7 possessions per game. In 1989, the league averaged 109.2 possessions with 100.6 possessions per game. The era you're born in plays a significant difference over the stats you put up, and most fans won't like to admit this. I don't think Wilt Chamberlain is averaging 50 points a game in today's game. By the grace of God, Wilt Chamberlain happened to hit his scoring prime at the exact same time that the NBA hit its prime for high-paced and high-scoring basketball, resulting in stat lines that are simply inconceivable and that will probably never happen again in the sport's history. So in order to balance out these dips and peaks of pace of play over the league's history, I created my own system of ranking a player's season called Season Score, inspired by by Jimmy Highroller. What goes into my version of season score is a player will be rewarded 1 point for every one stat they have of per 100 possession points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks, minus every turnover they have. By the way, per 100 possession stats are like your normal stats, but they're calculated if the player hypothetically played 100 possessions every game to normalize pace of play for different eras. They'll be rewarded 1 point for every 1 point they have of PER, win shares, box plus minus, and value over replacement. And finally, I don't think neither of these stats value defense nearly as much as they should. I'm giving 7 points for every all-defensive second team, 10 points for every all-defensive first team, and an extra 5 points for winning the Defensive Player of the Year. To give you guys an example, 2018 LeBron had per 100 possession stats of 36 points, 11 rebounds, 12 assists, 2 steals, and a block with 5.6 turnovers, which adds up to 57.4. Then adding on his advanced stats and his defensive accolades, you get a total score of 116.9. Pretty understandable. Well, I did this formula for every single season that LeBron and MJ played in the league, and it looks a little like this. As we can see, MJ still holds most of the top, with the best season between the two players coming from Jordan in 1988 at 153.3. Jordan also holds 4 of the top 5 seasons, 8 of the top 11 seasons, and 9 of the top 13 seasons. But let me ask you, do all these seasons that are slightly below what Jordan was doing for the Bulls really not matter at all? Michael Jordan might have the statistical higher peak, but what if your peak spans for decades instead of just a few seasons?
Coming to the end of the third quarter. LeBron James, a shot at history. LeBron stands alone. The NBA's all-time scoring record now belongs to LeBron James.
Moving on to the next important topic of the GOAT debate, longevity. How long a player played in the league while maintaining a high level of play is a crucial factor in this discussion. I don't even need to tell you who wins this category. Of course, it's Michael Jordan, with his unreal years with the Wizards, his per minute efficiency combined. Nah, I'm kidding. LeBron pretty much has every longevity record in the NBA at this point. You could look up longevity in the dictionary, and a small picture of LeBron James would show up. We all know this by now, so to really illustrate this point, I'm going to attempt to find some less known stats and facts about LeBron's longevity that might just blow your mind. LeBron James is in the midst of his 22nd season in the NBA, something that only one other player in the league's history has done, that being Vince Carter. Except Vince Carter in his 22nd season had a stat line of 5 points, 2.1 rebounds, and 0.8 assists a game. LeBron James is averaging 23, 8, and 9 in year 22. As a matter of fact, there aren't any old head NBA vets throughout the league's history that even come close to LeBron this year. In their final season of year 21, Robert Parrish, Kevin Willis, Dirk Nowitzki, and Kevin Garnett easily have stat lines that are smaller than LeBron James's. Same with Kareem, Kobe, Jamal Crawford, Udonis Haslem, and Chris Paul in year 20, their last season. LeBron James, at the recording of this video, just turned 40 years old. The King officially became the 32nd player in league history to lace up as a 40-year-old or older. These are the other 31 NBA players' stat lines at age 40 and above. Once again, none of them really come close to LeBron. The King's next closest opponent in the old man hoops department was Karl Malone with the Lakers, who averaged 13, 8, and 4. When looking at the phenomenal individual games while being an old head, LeBron easily dominates that. When looking at games above a 40-point game score, an advanced stat that tracks how good an individual game was, LeBron has 11 of the 14 best games from a player that's in season 15 or above. Insane. Magic Johnson and Larry Bird were two generational talents that pretty much ran the league. Throughout the entirety of the 1980s decade, there was never a year where the Celtics or Lakers weren't in the NBA Finals. Bird and Magic have 8 of the 10 NBA championships from that era and are both seen as undisputed top 10 players of all time. Except LeBron James has more points than both of them combined. I'm sure you guys are familiar with LeBron's streak of 10 points or more. The streak is exactly 1,250 games long at this point, dating back all the way until January of 2007. The next closest player in LeBron's ballpark is Michael Jordan, who's about 400 games off. Did you know LeBron James has placed top 20 in scoring for his first 21 seasons in the NBA? The next closest player to this feat is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar with 17 seasons doing this. Did you know LeBron is the youngest player at age 21 and the oldest player at age 37 to average 30 points or more in a season? LBJ is the oldest player in the league while averaging 10 plus points. Do you know who was the last player to do this? That would be John Stockton in 2003. Speaking of 2003, LeBron James scored his very first points against the Sacramento Kings on October 29th, 2003, a team who had Jabari Smith. Now fast forward about 2 decades and LeBron is playing against his son, Jabari Smith Jr. As a matter of fact, LeBron James has played against 10 father-son duos in his entire NBA career. Did you know the King has shared the court with players from the 1960s, 1970s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s? No one else has done this in NBA history. Finally, to really show you his longevity and consistency throughout 22 years of NBA play, the chosen one is a member of the 40K, 10K, 10K club. And there's no one that's even close to him. Not Kareem, not Karl Malone, not Kevin Garnett, or Wilt and Oscar, or Bird and Magic, or even Michael Jordan himself. So I think it's pretty obvious that LeBron takes the cake for longevity. I think it's time to move on. The next topic that's crucial to bring up when talking about the GOAT debate is awards and team success. I've decided to combine these two topics into one section of the video because championships and even finals MVPs to an extent are individual awards and team success at the same time. But anyways, first let's take a look at the trophy case of Michael Jordan. MJ, to no one's surprise, absolutely stuffs the graph with accolades on top of accolades. Air Jordan has a prime in terms of awards that no one in NBA history has been able to touch so far. In a 10-year span from 1987 to 1993 and then 1996 to 1998, Michael Jordan played near perfect basketball, winning the scoring title, All-Defensive First Team, All-NBA First Team, and an All-Star appearance every single season, while winning 5 MVPs, a Defensive Player of the Year, 6 Finals MVPs, and 6 championships. When looking at LeBron James' trophy case, it's also one of one impressive, but just in a different way that Jordan's is. LeBron James' unmatched longevity is on full display here. While LeBron doesn't quite have the championships, finals MVPs, or Defensive Player of the Years, he holds the record by a pretty wide margin for All-NBA selections and All-Star appearances. Kevin Garnett and David Robinson are both known as some of the greatest big men to ever play the game of basketball. LeBron James has more All-NBA selections than both of them combined. The next closest player to LeBron for All-NBA selections is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. LeBron could have stopped playing after his 2020 bubble ring, and he would still have the most All-NBA selections in league history. LeBron also has the record for most All-Star appearances, also at 20. When we look at both legends' basketball resumes side to side, we notice the recurring theme of this video, sustained greatness versus peak longevity. But the question still lies, whose resume is greater? Taking a final comparison at these two, MJ has more championships 6-4, Jordan has more finals MVPs 6-4, MJ has more MVPs 5-4, MJ has a Defensive Player of the Year that LeBron doesn't, MJ has 9 all-defensive team selections to LeBron's 6, Jordan has 10 scoring titles to LeBron's 1. However, LeBron James has 20 All-NBA selections to Jordan's 11, LeBron has 20 All-Star selections to Jordan's 14. To add more team success metrics to the mix, LeBron has 978 career regular season wins to MJ's 706. LeBron has more playoff wins at 182 compared to MJ's 118. However, Jordan has a higher regular season winning percentage and playoff winning percentage, 65.9 to 65.4 and 66.5 to 63.8. LeBron James has more playoff series wins, but also more playoff series losses. LeBron also has more finals appearances than MJ, 10-6. So to really conclude here, I would give the edge to MJ in both individual awards and team success. In my opinion, I think the impossibly large collection of All-NBA and All-Star selections from LeBron is super impressive, but I think awards like MVPs, Finals MVPs, and Defensive Player of the Years are more impressive, and the higher total of all defensive teams and scoring titles is just a cherry on top. Similar story with team success. While LeBron's ridiculous record of 10 finals appearances and 41 career playoff series wins is very impressive, at the end of the day, the main goal of playing basketball is to win championships, so I think Mike wins in both categories.
And And this ball game, ladies and gentlemen, is over, and we congratulate the Detroit Pistons, the NBA champions of the year 1988.
The road to redemption has brought the Warriors back home. The Golden State Warriors are the 2017 NBA champions.
The next important variable we're going to talk about in the GOAT debate is playoff competition. Both legends played against some of the best players in NBA history on their way to their postseason success, but whose path was really more challenging? Right here, we have a visual of every All-Star that both LeBron James and Michael Jordan played against in the playoffs. LeBron has played against a total of 83 All-Stars in his total playoff career, compared to 54 on Jordan's end. However, you expect this when you've played 7 more seasons than your competitor. When taking the average number of All-Stars per series, LeBron James would still come out on top, playing against an average of 1.54 All-Stars per series, compared to 1.46 from Michael Jordan. But I think a better way to look at playoff competition, instead of just purely looking at it through All-Stars, is to look at it through the records of teams they faced. Let's go through this round by round, starting with the first round. LeBron James has an incredible resume of the first round, only suffering his first loss there in 2021, his 18th season. Michael Jordan is the opposite, however, taking his only first round exits early in his career to the juggernauts of the 80s, like the Bucks with Terry Cummings and Sidney Moncrief, and the Celtics with Bird, McHale, and Parrish. Comparing these first round resumes, both players struggled to beat elite teams they faced against. Of teams with more than 55 wins in the first round, Jordan has 1 win, LeBron has 0. Of teams with a winning record in the first round, Jordan has 6 wins compared to LeBron's 8. In total, Michael Jordan played on average harder first round competition, 48.2 to 44.2. MJ also beat harder teams on average in the first round, 44.2 to 42.4. Next, let's take a look at the conference semifinals round. Michael Jordan has an 8-2 record here, while LeBron has a 12-3 record here. So both are identical at 80%. Something that immediately jumps out to me is the fact that MJ never had to face a team as good as the Big 3 Celtics in 08 or the Ben Wallace Pistons in 06, both teams with over 64 wins. The toughest team that MJ had to face in the second round was the Orlando Magic in 1995. Some of LeBron's most notable semifinal victories are the Raptors in 2018, shout out LeBronto, the 2011 Celtics, and the 2012 Pacers. Some of MJ's best wins in the second round are against the Steve Smith, Mookie Blaylock, and Dikembe Mutombo Hawks in 97, the Mark Price and Brad Daugherty Cavs in 1993, and the Charles Barkley 76ers in 1990. To conclude this round, Michael Jordan once again comes out on top with an average of 51.9 compared to LeBron's 51.2. When we look at teams beaten, Jordan also comes out on top, 51.0 to 48.9. Okay, moving on to the conference finals. MJ has a record of 6-2 here, while LeBron beats him at a record of 10-2. Both players have a really similar resume here. Both MJ and LeBron beat 3 teams that were over the 60-win threshold. LeBron beating the 2012 Celtics, 2011 Bulls, and 2016 Hawks. Jordan beating the 97 Heat, 93 Knicks, and 96 Magic. Something else to note here is that Jordan didn't beat the best team he played against in the conference finals, that being the 89 Pistons. As a matter of fact, it took Jordan until the Pistons were only a 50-win team for the Bulls to beat them. LeBron beat the best 3 teams in his conference finals career. To conclude, Michael Jordan once again takes the cake for more difficult average competition at 58.5 compared to LeBron's 55.8. Air Jordan also has a higher average for teams beaten, 57.7 to 55.8. Now, on to everyone's favorite round, the NBA Finals. First off, the obvious, Michael Jordan has the finals record of 6-0 compared to LeBron's 4-6 record. Something that instantly jumps out at me is that Jordan has never beaten a team quite like the 2016 Warriors. However, MJ wasn't playing against slouches in the NBA Finals, the way TikTok would believe you to think. When looking at teams above 60 wins, Michael Jordan has 4 wins compared to LeBron's lone win against the Warriors in 16, losing in 2015 and 2017, and the 2014 Spurs. To conclude the NBA Finals, Michael Jordan has the higher average competition at 61.1 wins compared to LeBron's 60.8. When looking at teams beaten, LeBron's number goes down to 59.7, but still not high enough to beat MJ's 61.1. Once again, going over the stats for each round, Michael Jordan has the higher average opponent win mark for the first round, second round, conference finals, and NBA finals, as well as the higher average for teams beaten. While LeBron James has some objectively tougher outlier series, especially in the NBA finals, going up against the Warriors, who had 67 wins or more for 3 straight seasons. I think many of LeBron's toughest battles seem to hide many of the easier playoff series that he kind of breezed through. For every 08 Celtics and 06 Pistons LeBron had to go up against in the second round, he also played against his fair share of teams like the 41-41 Nets in 2007 with Vince Carter, or the 2014 Nets led by a fossilized Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce. For every 2012 Celtics and 2011 Bulls LeBron managed to overcome in the conference finals, he also skated by teams like the 2013 Pacers with 49 wins led by a 22-year-old Paul George, or the 2020 Denver Nuggets with a very underdeveloped Murray and Jokic duo. For every Golden State Warrior team you had to fight toe-to-toe with, you also got to play against teams like the 2020 Heat and the 2011 Old Man Mavericks, which you didn't even beat, by the way. I think Michael Jordan's playoff competition, while it isn't as flashy as saying, I got to beat the 73-9 Warriors, MJ had a lot less outliers he had to play against, both in a good way and a bad way, especially later in the playoff rounds. Teams like the Utah Jazz of the late 90s, the Suns in 93, and the Supersonics in 96 aren't quite on the same level as the Splash Brother Warriors, but they were really good teams that probably would have won the championship most years if it weren't for MJ. Now, you can't talk about who MJ and LeBron beat in the playoffs without talking about who they had by their sides in those matchups. At the end of the day, basketball is a team sport. No one single man has won a championship before. First, let's take a look at the all-star teammates that LeBron and Jordan had. MJ had Scottie Pippen for 6 years, being an all-star, that being 1990, 92, 93, 95, 96, and 97. LeBron had 16 total all-star teammates throughout his career. Mo Williams in 2009, Wade and Bosh with the Heat, Kyrie and Kevin Love with the Cavs, and Anthony Davis in 3 seasons, probably going to be 4 after this February. MJ on average played with 0.4 All-Stars per season, while LeBron played with 0.76 All-Stars on average. Taking it a step further and looking at All-NBA teammates, both players have had 6 teammates that have been on an All-NBA team. MJ once again having Scottie Pippen for 6 years, LeBron having D. Wade for 3 years, Kyrie in 2015, and Anthony Davis for 2 years. MJ on average played with 0.4 All-NBA teammates, while LeBron James has played with 0.25 All-NBA teammates. Something else that many people don't factor into the health equation is coaching, which MJ would easily have better throughout his career. Jordan has had the greatest coach of all time, being Phil Jackson, from 1990 until 1998. LeBron James has went through 10 different head coaches throughout his career. Part of this due to his longevity, but mostly because LeBron has never had a stable and reliable coach how MJ had Jackson. While LeBron had Eric Spoelstra and Ty Lue, the other 8 coaches weren't the greatest. Now, this, for most people, is about how far they get into the help side of the GOAT debate, if they're lucky. But I think this discussion goes a bit deeper. Right here, we have a graph that shows the amount of team wins that MJ and LeBron accumulated throughout their careers. As we can see, both players started off with terrible teams, but eventually worked their way up to championship contenders. The only real difference comes around season 9 or so, where MJ's Bulls got better, while the best teams LeBron was a part of were back in Miami. And obviously, LeBron has maintained his longevity of playing with above average teams. Now, team wins are great to look at, but they don't quite show us how much Jordan and LeBron actually did for those teams. Luckily for us, we can use the stat win shares that we looked at earlier in this video to help us with that. For a reminder, win shares shows us approximately how much wins a player is responsible for of a team's given win count. So for example, Michael Jordan was responsible for 20.4 wins of the 1996 Bulls' total 72 wins that season. Just like the team wins graph, the win shares chart shows LeBron James and Jordan with very similar trajectories, both players taking no time to start impacting their teams in a big way while peaking out at around 20 to 21 win shares. However, I think MJ extended his peak of win shares a bit further than LeBron did. For context, a solid role player will give you about 5 win shares, and your typical superstar will give you around 10 win shares. What LeBron and Jordan were doing in their primes was unheard of. Now, win shares are nice, but they have the exact opposite issue with just looking at team wins. Win shares don't show us how good the teams were around the stars. If we subtract the win shares of LeBron and Mike from their team's total win count of a given season, it looks like this. This graph shows us a few things. First off, that both Jordan and LeBron's teams early in their careers were complete dog shit. Except Jordan's were probably a little worse. Both players had dips and peaks around season 6 to season 9, where their team started to become serious contenders. Right here, 2014 for LeBron and 1995 for MJ represents a shift, because MJ played with his best help of his career during his second three-peat with a prime Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, Tony Kukoc, and more, while LeBron's best help of his career was with Miami. Ever since the days of the Heat, LeBron's wins without him stayed around the high 30s and low 40s with a few occasional dips. The last metric we're going to look at for help is individual contributions, which is done by dividing win shares from team wins. This gives us a percentage of how much LeBron and Jordan were contributing to their team. For context, a solid role player would contribute around 12% of their team's efforts, while a superstar would contribute around 20%. This graph shows us just how much both LeBron and MJ were truly doing for their teams, especially MJ in the late 80s and LeBron right here in 2013. We can see that MJ was doing more to help the Bulls win in their first three-peat than in their second three-peat. LeBron James, outside of his monster 2013 season, has remained in the high 20%, low 30% range for contributions. Getting a final recap of all of this information we just went over, MJ has been on better teams throughout his career at an average of 51 wins compared to LeBron's 49. However, Michael Jordan has also contributed more to those teams on average than LeBron did, 14.2 to 12.5. Hypothetically taking away Jordan and LeBron from their teams, LeBron's teams on average suffer more than Jordan's teams, 36.8 to 37 wins. But like we discussed, Jordan contributes more to his teams, 26.9% to 25% from LeBron. So in conclusion, I think LeBron has played with more offensive firepower around him and more stars than MJ. Well, MJ has had his first man Scottie Pippen with him for the majority of his career, a luxury that LeBron never had. MJ was lucky enough to have the greatest coach of all time in Phil Jackson with him in the Bulls, while they were title contenders, while LeBron has bounced around with a bunch of different coaches. MJ's team suffered less without his presence, but MJ had a bigger impact on his teams throughout his career. I think both legends had a very similar level of help throughout their career. However, I would argue that LeBron had a touch bit less help, but Michael Jordan had a bigger impact to his teams than LeBron did.
James drives, James cannot finish. Even if you don't get along, there comes a point where you've got to stop sugarcoating it and telling the truth. There he gets it back and a foul from behind. We've got two here in the fourth. This veteran Mavericks team always confident they can come back. Terry shot rolls. Celebration will begin. The Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. The first title in franchise history.
It's moments like these that defines a player. LeBron's 2011 choke job might be one of the darkest blemishes on his basketball career. But Eddie, other NBA legends had bad playoff series before. LeBron isn't the only one. Well, you'd actually be right. Steph Curry had the 2016 finals, Kobe Bryant had the 2004 finals, Tragic Johnson completely gave away the 1984 NBA finals, James Harden was a couple less bricked threes away from taking down the 2018 Warriors, Dirk Nowitzki and the 1-seeded Mavericks lost to the 8-seeded Warriors in the first round in 2007. Michael Jordan had... Wait, when was Michael Jordan's worst playoff series? Come to think about it, does MJ even have a signature choke job like the rest of these legends? I think something in the GOAT debate that Jordan doesn't get enough credit for is how he doesn't have any notable letdowns individually in the postseason. Of course, the Bulls did a lot of losing in the 80s playoffs, but MJ was doing all that he possibly could out there. Right here, this chart shows us every NBA legend's worst playoff series according to the stat game score, which quantifies how good a player's single game performance was. To give you guys some context about how good or bad a certain game score is, anything from 0 to 10 is relatively bad, a very insignificant contributor to the team. Anything from 10 to 15 is an average performance from an average NBA player. 15 to 20 is above average, either a really good game from a role player or a slightly below average game from a star. 20 to 25 is about the average night from a star player, a very good performance. 25 to 30 is an elite performance from a superstar player. Anything above 30 would be an incredible game, and games ranging in the high 30s and above are historic single game performances. But in our case, we're going to use it for series average. One major rule of this chart is that your team has to lose the playoff series to be eligible. Starting from oldest to youngest, Tragic Johnson in the 1984 NBA Finals is a series that many want to forget about, making several crucial blunders in crunch time. His arch rival Larry Bird, his worst playoff series was in the 1988 Eastern Conference Finals against the Pistons. While he was partially injured this series, the guy just looked like a shell of himself. Pistons' Isaiah Thomas's worst playoff series was against the Bulls in 1991, getting swept and pretty much ending the bad boy Pistons dynasty. Hakeem's worst series was in 1996 against the Supersonics. Olajuwon, after coming off back-to-back underdog championships, was expected to do the same in 96, but they couldn't defeat Seattle. Kobe's worst playoff run was the 2004 NBA Finals, when Kobe was expected to lead the Lakers with Shaq getting old, but he did quite the opposite and shot the Lakers out of the series. His former teammate Shaquille O'Neal, his worst playoff series was the 2006 NBA Finals. While the Heat won this series, Shaq was terrible, playing like a shell of himself and getting benched during crunch time because he couldn't hit a free throw. Dirk Nowitzki's worst playoff series, like we talked about before, was losing to the 8-seeded Warriors in 2007. Dwayne Wade is in a very similar situation to Dirk. In 2006, he made an incredible finals run only to lose in the first round the following year. Tim Duncan's worst playoff performance was against the 6-seeded Mavericks in the first round, where Duncan and the 3-seeded Spurs lost 3-1. LeBron James' worst playoff round was without a shadow of a doubt the 2011 Finals. Don't even need to explain that one. His arch nemesis Steph Curry, without a doubt his worst playoff series is the 2016 NBA Finals. 3-1, that's all I gotta say. Giannis' worst playoff series was the 2019 Eastern Conference Finals, where Kawhi and the Raptors pretty much put Giannis in jail. Speaking of Kawhi, the Claw's worst series was the 3-1 lead they choked against Denver in the bubble, where Kawhi shot an abysmal 6 for 22 in Game 7 of the series. Jokic's worst outing was against the Lakers in the NBA bubble during the conference finals. Jokic just completely looked outmatched by an old Dwight Howard. Kevin Durant's worst playoff series was where he got swept by Boston in 2022 in the first round. Finally, Jason Tatum's worst series was by far the 2022 NBA Finals, where he completely fell apart against the more experienced Golden State Warriors. So where's Michael Jordan at then? Well, if we plot his 7 playoff series losses, it looks like this. To make the take that Michael Jordan hasn't had a bad playoff series ever in his career, isn't that ridiculous? Well, what about 1995 against the Magic? Yeah, where he averaged 31, 6, 3 on near 48% shooting. Well, what about his losses against the Pistons though? In 1988 against the Pistons, Jordan averaged 27, 9, and 4 on 49% shooting, and in 1989 he averaged 29, 5, and 6 on 46% shooting. What other series do you want me to bring up? His rookie year against the Bucks? 29, 6, and 8 on 43% shooting. Getting back to the GOAT debate, no one really expected LeBron to win the 2007 Finals. Well, he really didn't play that well. Everyone gave him a pass. He was young, the team around him wasn't great. They were playing against a way more experienced team in the San Antonio Spurs. They weren't even supposed to be there. This was a learning experience for the chosen one. This massacre is inexcusable. LeBron, with arguably the best roster of his career, played against his worst finals opponent outside of the Jimmy Butler Heat in 2020. This was supposed to be ring number 1. Referring back to that game score stat, because my curiosity struck me, I did the extremely daunting and mind-numbing task of tracking every single Michael Jordan and LeBron James playoff series in both of their careers, and the results might shock you. Taking a look at this graph, the x-axis represents which season the legend is in, and the y-axis represents the game score the legend had in that series. LeBron is in blue and Jordan is in red. Now, there's a lot of dots on here, no shit. Taking this one step at a time, first taking a look at the first round performances, Michael Jordan played 13 first rounds compared to LeBron's 17. MJ's best first round series was against the Heat in 1992, while LeBron's best first round was against the Pistons in 09. MJ has an average first round score of 28.1, while LeBron had an average first round score of 23.99. Moving on to the second round, Michael Jordan has played 10 second round playoff series, while LeBron has played 15. MJ's best second round series was against the 76ers in 1990, where he was absolutely frying Chuck and the 76ers, while LeBron's best was against the Raptors in 2018. Shout out LeBronto. Michael Jordan's average second round score beats LeBron's score 24.63 to 22.95. In the conference finals, MJ has played there 8 times, while LeBron has played there 12 times. MJ's best performance there was against the Pistons in 1991, while LeBron's best performance was against the Magic in 2009. This time, LeBron is the higher average conference final score at 24.26 compared to MJ's 23.08. Moving on to everyone's favorite, the NBA Finals. MJ, of course, has played there 6 times compared to LeBron's 10 appearances. MJ's best finals appearance being the series against the Suns in 1993, while LeBron's best finals appearance was against the Warriors in 2017. A very underrated performance from the King. However, it's Michael Jordan that has the highest NBA Finals average performance at 24.68 compared to LeBron's 22.94. When we take a look at everything combined, every playoff series from the two legends, MJ's best playoff series was against the Heat in 1992 in the first round, while LeBron's best series was against the Raptors in 2018 in the second round. Michael Jordan, on average, has played better in the postseason than LeBron, 25.53 to 23.57. So to conclude this section, Michael Jordan has never actually choked a playoff series, according to the standards of other NBA legends, while you can't say the same about LeBron. Michael Jordan has also outplayed LeBron in the first round, second round, and NBA Finals on average, while only paling to LeBron in the conference finals.
Sellers has Jordan. Jordan with 2 seconds to go, puts it up and scores at the buzzer. Michael Jordan has won it for Chicago.
3 seconds to go. Throws up the floater. Golf ball! Good night, Cleveland. That is for you.
Something that gets brought up a lot in the GOAT debate is clutch shooting. Who is the best when it really counted? Many Jordan fans love to say that LeBron James didn't have that killer instinct. But how true is this really? LeBron James has the NBA record for the most amount of NBA game winners in the playoffs at 7. MJ only has 3. Michael Jordan has shot 7 of 15 on tying or go-ahead baskets in the final 24 seconds in the playoffs. LeBron has shot 19 of 41 in the same circumstances. Michael Jordan has a field goal percentage of 45.2% in the playoffs within 5 minutes and within 5 points, with 671 total points in this circumstance. LeBron, in the same situation, has shot 46.8% while scoring 1,130 points. LeBron James has 5 playoff buzzer beaters on 50% shooting compared to Jordan's 3 buzzer beaters on 43% shooting. Now, all these clutch scoring numbers are great, but there's one really big issue about clutch stats. Many of the clutch shooting stats we use today started from the use of player shot tracking, which began in the 1996 and 97 season, which is Jordan's second last year with the Bulls. It's kind of tough to find real and concrete clutch scoring data outside of the basic stuff I just showed you. Both players in the data I showed you are roughly the same, probably even a slight edge to LeBron. But I think the clutch debate is a lot more subjective than most people admit it to be. LeBron and Jordan represent the 2 different type of archetypes in the clutch. The Jordan archetype is the type of leader that you know is going to take that last shot. Doesn't matter if he's double or even triple teamed. He's willing to live with the result of his shot as long as he takes it. The LeBron archetype is the type of team leader that's going to make the best play for his team down the stretch. Sometimes that's forcing the issue on offense. Other times that's finding his open teammates and trusting them in the clutch. LeBron has gotten a lot of criticism throughout his career for not taking the last shot and instead trusting his teammates, who have let him down a lot. He's gotten a lot of criticism for not fitting into that traditional Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, and Kobe Bryant type of mold in the clutch. Saying that either of these 2 players aren't clutch is just flat out ignorant. In my opinion, the whole clutch debate really depends on what you want your team leader to do in crunch time. Go out and hunt the shot for himself every time and live with the result of taking and missing bad shots, but at least you had the balls to take it. Or go out and hunt the best shot for your team, but live with the result of your teammates missing some open shots while you take the blame for not having the killer instinct. That's just my take on the whole clutch debate, and I think it's a lot more subjective than most make it out to be. But let me know in the comments if you disagree.
Comes off. The Chicago Bulls have won their 6th NBA championship, and it's their 2nd three-peat. It's over. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
Cleveland, this is for you.
You know, all of these numbers, stats, and data about a player will look diluted through the lens of future NBA perspectives, but something that always sticks with a player is the legacy they left behind. You hear the word legacy thrown out a lot there in the sports world. I would define legacy in basketball as the long-term impact and reputation a player has, encompassing their awards and achievements. To be clear, legacy does not include off-court influence. Michael Jordan was the main pioneer for the globalization and the overall expansion and growth of the NBA over the last 30 to 40 years. LeBron James is the main pioneer for the player empowerment era that the NBA has went through in the last 20 years. These impacts are not included in this video's version of legacy. While both LeBron and Jordan have the undisputed two greatest legacies of all time, they're way different in the way they played out. Michael Jordan's legacy is like a Hollywood movie. The stage was set perfectly for him to first overcome the juggernauts of the late 80s in the Pistons and Celtics. Once those dynasties of the 80s faded with time, Jordan's Bulls peaked right after their decline, leading to Jordan claiming 3 championships. Then he retired for quote-unquote baseball, but really his gambling addiction, and then miraculously came back and won 3 more chips, eventually retiring with the Bulls, and then the Wizards happened. Michael Jordan's charisma, charm, electrifying presence, and larger-than-life persona, or his aura, left fans in awe of what he could do in the basketball court. Couple this with his calculated retirements to avoid negatively affecting his reputation as a global ambassador for the game and tainting his undefeated NBA Finals record, which, by the way, I don't think MJ was beating the Rockets during his first retirement or any other team after '98. All of these precise details of his career lead him to having the best legacy of any player. LeBron James is kind of the opposite though. LeBron, like Mike, started his career unable to overcome the super teams of the 2000s like the Celtics, Pistons, and Spurs. However, while MJ was lucky enough to have Scottie Pippen and Phil Jackson both land on his team, LeBron didn't have this luxury, forcing him to make a really tough decision that ultimately tainted his legacy. The Cavs never got the help that LeBron needed. LeBron then spent the majority of the 2010s squaring up with some of the greatest dynasties the league has ever produced, leading to a not-so-perfect NBA Finals record and him falling shadow to the Warriors being the best dynasty of his era, not his own team. Ever since this, LeBron has grown his legacy with the unwavering longevity that he's shown. MJ lived the perfect Hollywood legacy, while LeBron had his obvious flaws spilt all over the canvas. You know, I could have all the data, all the numbers, all the well thought out analysis and contextualization of the GOAT debate, and still most young fans would still tell me, we done with the 90s. MJ played against plumbers, the 80s and 90s were trash, and honestly, I would partially agree with them. Players of today's game are objectively more skilled and talented on the basketball court than players of prior generations. This isn't some wild conspiracy theory, it's a pretty well-known fact. Free throw percentage was worse, 3-point percentage was worse, turnover percentage was higher, 2-point field goal percentage is higher today. Players are just simply more capable today. However, you couldn't do what players are doing today back then. The NBA 50, 40, 20, heck even just 10 years ago had a lot more strict ball handling and stepping rules that have been bent and changed in today's era for more entertainment for the casual fan. Don't believe me? Just go look up the NBA rulebook or just go do a simple Google search of NBA rule changes over the years. Even if Michael Jordan wanted to do a between the legs hezzy fake into a step back, he couldn't do it due to the rules in place. This clip of Danny Ainge and Kevin McHale represents 80s dribbling and the rules pretty well.
When sessions were completed, some of the most competitive competition began.
Double dribble! Double dribble! He did too! I didn't.
Most dribble combos that players use today would be instantly called a travel, carry, double dribble, or all of the above. If players of the past worked on their three-pointers and dribble combos instead of simple layups, mid-range shots, post moves, and overall team basketball, maybe they would develop into the next Steph Curry or James Harden. Another question for these young fans: if the 80s and the 90s were trash to you, when did the NBA officially become not trash? When did all the plumbers retire and go home to their wives and kids? Let me guess, 2003, the not trash era? By this logic, if you're putting this era tax on the older generations, LeBron James still wouldn't be the GOAT. Wouldn't the best player in the most advanced era of the game be the best? According to this era tax mindset, Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Luka Doncic, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander would all be better than LeBron. But LeBron has 4 rings, 4 MVPs, and 4 Finals MVPs. Yeah, but they sucked back then. Joel Anthony was literally a starting center for a championship team. Kendrick Perkins started 65 of 66 regular season games for the Thunder in 2012, the same team that made the NBA Finals that year. None of these bums would even sniff playing time in 2024. No one could even shoot threes back then. According to this era tax idea, the 2024 Boston Celtics would be the best team in NBA history, followed by the 2023 Nuggets. For all the young fans that don't listen to older fans now, what are you gonna do when someone says that Steph Curry was a mediocre 3-point shooter and that LeBron played against TikTokers and Twitch streamers? You know with your own 2 eyes that Steph Curry was quite far from an average 3-point shooter, and LeBron definitely played against some really good teams and players in the playoffs. But what are you gonna tell them when there's a bunch of Wemby clones running around the NBA in 2040? I think it goes both ways. Older fans need to appreciate the greatness they have right in front of them right now and stop pedestalizing the good old days, while younger fans need to appreciate the legends that came before them that paved the NBA into what it is today. The way you compare players of different eras isn't through some era tax system. You have to compare the achievements, awards, legacies of what players did in their era while contextualizing the numbers to go along with that. At this point in the video, if you've actually been watching the whole thing and you didn't just skip through the timestamps, I think you already know my pick for the GOAT debate. Michael Jeffrey Jordan is my NBA GOAT as of the time of this recording. To give you guys this debate in a nutshell, just in case you fell asleep or something, I know this is a pretty long video. Michael Jordan has the better career basic stat averages, he has the better team success with 6 rings, has the better basketball resume in terms of accolades, has the higher peak, played against harder playoff competition and beat better teams in the playoffs, contributed more to his teams, statistically played better on average in the playoffs, has the better basketball legacy, and doesn't have a famous choke job that all of these other legends have. LeBron James has the worst help, has the better basic stat accumulation, advanced stat accumulation, and longer sustained excellence, or in plain English, longevity. In essence, Michael Jordan was statistically the better basketball player at the peak of his powers than LeBron James was, and pretty much everything I mentioned in this video is proof of that. However, LeBron James is probably the next closest thing in MJ in terms of peak production in NBA history, except LeBron James maintained his game a lot longer than MJ did. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, the GOAT debate does not have an objective answer, as much as I want there to be one. I just did the task of finding every single little detail about this debate under the sun to help you justify your answer in this discussion. Contrary to the thumbnail, I didn't solve shit. The GOAT debate is really about your preference in a basketball player. What do you value more? How good a player was at the peak of their playing days, or how elite their playing days lasted? Me personally, I value the first option, but I'm not completely shut off to people seeing it in the second way. The problem is when people try to bring anyone else into the discussion, because let's just be honest, no one in NBA history is at the level that these two gentlemen are at. But has the door quite shut on LeBron yet? Is there anything in the 2024 and 2025 season and beyond that LeBron James can do to seriously shift the GOAT debate? How his 2016 ring, his 2018 playoff run, his 2020 ring, or his undeniable longevity has been? At this point, sides have long been taken. Chances are you had your pick coming into this video, and you still have the same pick. I think LeBron James is done winning MVPs as long as Jokic, Giannis, Shai, and Luka are still in the league. I don't think LeBron is going to reverse time and put up a record-breaking season in terms of numbers. At this point, LeBron has the longevity argument going for him, and all these extra stats are just a cherry on top of an already great career. However, I think there's one possible scenario that LeBron could do that could cause one last great shift. You know what I'm hinting at. What if LeBron James went on one last deep playoff run and secured ring number 5? This sounds pretty far-fetched, but is it really? The Lakers were the 7th seed just 2 years ago and made it to the conference finals. The Mavericks as the 5 seed last year made it to the NBA finals. Same with the 8 seeded Miami Heat in 2023, with Anthony Davis playing some of the best basketball of his career. What if LeBron and the Lakers made one last championship run with 5 rings, 5 finals MVPs, assuming he'd win it, and the longevity longevity on his side, I think we'd seriously have to reconsider the GOAT debate. Otherwise, I rest my case of Michael Jordan being the GOAT of the NBA.